Okay, final score here in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and Cork have won by a point on a final score of 114 to 16 points. Rena, what did you make of that?
Very enjoyable, particularly the second half.
From a Cork woman, it definitely is enjoyable.
Yeah, look, Cork will be absolutely thrilled. It's the first time in a number of years that Cork have put together two kind of consistent wins, but in particular consistent performances, you know, where they overturned a Division 1 team. It's been a while since Cork have done that, so like that alone is a massive plus for Cork, and the fact that they're into a quarter final as well. They're probably, I kind of don't like the term bonus territory, but probably wouldn't have been expected to get there. They're there now, they're there on merit, and they're playing well. They're not relying on one or two, you know, they're playing well as a team, so they'll be absolutely thrilled. Roscommon on the other hand, Roscommon will be very disappointed.
Yeah.
Like, they were probably quite consistent in the game. They were very consistent in the first half. They'll be fierce disappointed they left Cork back into it just before half time. Second half they tipped away, did fine, but I suppose they missed a couple of goal chances in the first half. They'll rue those misses, and they'll really be disappointed with how they managed the last, like the injury time in particular, that last 4 minutes. Like they had more possession of the ball. They overturned the ball here in the middle of the field,
Was it a double bounce?
A double bounce, I think. A terrible turnover to give with the game level. And then in the corner here, they tried to work a score which kind of wasn't on. They forced it, and they didn't force any other score for the whole game. So they'd be just really disappointed with those couple of things.
Yeah, because isn't it throughout this championship and even through the league, one thing that people have said about a Davy Burke Roscommon side is that they can control a game brilliantly. We saw it against Dublin, how they held on to the ball for 6 minutes or whatever it was, people talking about it throughout the whole week after that. They lacked composure at times today, didn't they?
Just, I think, particularly at the end.
Yeah.
And there was probably a period in the middle of the second half and the end of the first half where they got overturned a little bit on kickouts, and they kind of repeated the same mistake maybe twice in a row, which you wouldn't be expecting from a team that are as consistent as they are. I think they made a mistake in the first half with a kick out, and next thing they made the same mistake again. Same thing happened in the second half, and that would be kind of unexpected for a team as kind of consistent as Roscommon, really. But aside from that, they had probably more possession than Cork throughout the game, and they controlled most of the game. And like a lot of times when Cork went into the attack, you know, they were swallowed up kind of in that, you know, the Roscommon half backline section. They really kind of broke down a lot of attacks, and Cork found it hard to break through. But when the game opened up a little bit, Cork did start punching holes, and Cork, I think, had a little bit more variety in their play, whereas Roscommon were a little bit more kind of predictable, I think, and that kind of predictability probably contributed in the end, I think, a little bit to their downfall.
Would you say that the Cork bench was a big difference as well?
Oh, massive difference, yeah, massive. Like I think Chris Jones came on. I think he gave a lot of energy to Cork. He was buzzing around looking for ball. He was involved in a lot of kind of interplay there. Conor Corbett got the crucial goal in the second half. Kevin O'Donovan came in. He did a fine job as well. So Cork will be really pleased with their bench for sure. Yeah.
For Cork, now they're in a quarter final. They were in a quarter final last year as well, but I think they beat Limerick and Louth probably to get to the quarter final. No disrespect to either team, but it feels like they really deserve to be in a quarter final after beating two Division 1 teams. Absolutely,
and I suppose the difference between this year and last year as well was that when Cork played Kerry this year, Cork matched Kerry for all the game. No, they were beaten by Kerry, I think by 2 points in the end. But it wasn't the case that after 50 or 60 minutes, you know, Kerry got away and that, you know, that their conditioning was ahead of Cork. Cork stuck with them, so they've really shown in the championships section to date that they can really mix it with the Division 1 teams. So that'll give them huge confidence facing into a quarter final.
And they can finish games very strong, don't they? They finished the Mayo game very strong against Louth. I think they also finished very strong. That's a plus. Also, it helps that when you have a bench that can contribute like they did today. But that's a big plus going into, you know, going forward, even going into the quarter-final now, if they can keep with teams into the 50-minute mark and they feel like they've known now from experience that they can finish out games fairly strong, it'll definitely bring a lot of confidence into the quarter-final, won't it?
Definitely, for sure. No, I did think maybe that Roscommon had the upper hand maybe between the 60th and 70th minute. And at 70 minutes, when it was all square, I was a little concerned where would the scores come from for Cork. And it was nearly the mistakes from Roscommon that presented Cork the opportunities. But in fairness, they weren't totally out on their feet, and every team has purple patches. And when Roscommon had that purple patch, Cork stuck in, and when Cork had their purple patches, they created opportunities as well. So, it's not a major concern that, I'd be much more pleased, in the games that they've played, particularly since the Munster Championship. They are matching every team physically, so they'll be very content with that.
And in terms of Roscommon, it's a very disappointing end to the year, but they kept their Division 1 status in the league. They bet Mayo in the Connacht Championship. They've had a lot of big games, haven't they? It's hard to know what way to look back at Roscommon's year now, isn't it?
Absolutely, I would agree with you. So I assume at the start of the year a big aim for them would be to maintain their Division 1 status, and they did that. They did very well in Division 1. I think they won 4 games, lost 3 games maybe. I think they finished up in 3rd, so they'd be very pleased with that. They had a great start into the Connacht Championship. They turned Mayo over and then were beaten by Galway. I think was there 4 points maybe in it in the end. Again, some good, some bad. And then when it came to the All-Ireland section, they drew at Dublin, beat Sligo, and then they had that loss against Kildare. So it's been kind of an up and down year for them. I think in terms of positives from the game today, you'd have to look at their consistency throughout the game. They were, in fairness, for the 70 minutes they were very consistent. Probably in the first half when they were in control, they probably didn't make it count enough on the scoreboard. Missed a couple of goal chances. They'll be disappointed about that. Donny Smith got injured. He was a bit of a blow to them as well. He was a big loss to them. But you'd have to pick out in the Smith. What a player! He was phenomenal today. Year. On the ball, off the ball, his tackling was very good. He'd made a couple of turnovers. In terms of his link play, his shooting, he was super. He could carry the ball, he could shoot the ball. He was really, really good. Diarmuid Murta, I thought, was really good as well. So, they have some really talented players. They have a nicely balanced team. I think they probably need a little bit more variety in their play, but they definitely have the building blocks of, being, continuing in that Division 1 status. And I think what they'll be looking for next year, is to go further in the championship. Clare beat them in a quarter-final last year. So they'll be looking at going that step further, I think, next year, getting a big scalp in championship as well.
The championship I think has really come to life in the last 2 weeks. We've been crying out for these games. Where is the jeopardy? And I thought last weekend was brilliant. There was some games where the last kick of a ball, decided the fate of some counties. And today, that was proper championship football, wasn't it? It's hard, we can be very reactive in the GA community about everything, but you have to say now that so far this is the start of the preliminary quarterfinals, but it's a good start to knockout championship football. What are your thoughts? I was going to say bless you, I thought you were going to sneeze. What are your thoughts on the championships so far? I know there's still a lot of football to be played, and it seems like the best football is still yet to be played, but what have you made of it so far?
So it's funny, when the GA announced the new championship structure, I kind of rolled my eyes a little bit and I was like, oh no, this group scenario it's not going to contribute. But on reflection, when you look back at the Super 8s, there was dead rubber games in that structure. There's no dead rubber games in this current structure. Well, there's very little of them anyway, and they've really been really enjoyable. There's been some cracking games, and I agree with you. Last weekend was so interesting. The way Mayo went from cruising to now having to go to Galway, to play their preliminary quarter-final away from home. So their season has turned completely, and it's just opened things up. And Like it's changed the championship completely. Likewise, like Cork last week. I mean, it was just a feast of football last week, and it really whet the appetite for the knockout section of the All Ireland series, which is what everyone enjoys the most. And we got a really entertaining game today, and I'm sure there's plenty more entertaining games to come.
Just actually, as a Cork woman, are you surprised? Could you say you're surprised that Cork are now into a quarter final? Like, did you expect them to get to a quarter final during the league campaign, let's say? Am
I surprised they're in a quarter final? Look, I wouldn't have tipped them to get to a quarter final, I would say. They have been working away diligently, and the difference with them this year is they've put consistent performances back to back. They've been very consistent. I know they lost to Clare in the Munster Championship, but Clare have shown that they're a good senior team as well. There was only a point in that game, and Cork have been consistent. So I think that's what we've been kind of crying out for a little bit in Cork football, is that consistency. And the second thing, and I keep harping on about it, but I think it's massive, that physically Cork can match the Division 1 teams.
Yeah. And
like, you're at nothing unless you can do that. And they're at that position now, and that's why they can contest. Like, I'm fully sure about that. I'm sure there was always structures in place, but you have to be able to match the teams physically, and they're doing that, and I think that's why they're competitive.
Lastly, on Cork, if Hurley is fit to play in the quarter final, you have to play Hurley and Sherlock, don't you?
Yeah.
Like, Sherlock wouldn't have started today only for Hurley was injured, we're being told. Surely you have to start both if both are fit, do you? Is there room for the two?
Yeah, well, I suppose Sherlock answered a lot of questions today in that.
Brilliant.
He played a very good game from start to finish. Like, he's definitely a shooter, and like we all know, when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of like knockout championship, you need your shooters on the field. My gut would be yes, I'd like to have him on the field. Like, he can clearly play for 70 minutes. He tracked back, he did all that defensive stuff as well. But he got forward, he got his hands on the ball when he needed to get his hands on the ball. He won a very important free there in the second half with just a bit of cuteness, just won the free. Kind of thing out of nothing, that Cork were going nowhere. And just, tipping over one or two scores like that can often be the difference between winning and losing. So hopefully, from a Cork point of view, that Hurley will be fit next week.
Yeah.
And if we have the two of them on, along with obviously the rest of did Rory Maguire kick 2 points?
Yeah, and O'Driscoll, he was brilliant as well.
Yeah. So, like, obviously everyone's going to contribute to the scoreboard, but like, every team has one or two shooters, or three, or not more than that really. It's great to have your shooters on the field.
Yeah, well, the rebel roar was loud in Páirc Uí Chaoimh today. Cork march on to the quarterfinals, and it's the end of the year for Roscommon, but finally we're getting some good championship football. Thank you, Rena.
Thanks very much, Cathal.